It's the NBA draft earlier this week, 60 players finding new homes, and then a little bit of trade activity afterwards, sending some players to some new spots, of course, including LaMelo Ball being traded yesterday from the Hornets to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The first overall pick in that draft, it belonged to the Washington Wizards. And joining us now on the Heister Automotive Group hotline, Ben Strober, host of the Locked On Wizards podcast and producer for 106.7 The Fan in Washington, D.C. Ben, how are you doing this morning?
It's a good feeling when you get the number one overall pick and you get all of the novelty of it and just to see the environment that we saw in D.C. yesterday for his introductory press conference and the fan fest that transpired after. I thought it was really special. So I'm doing pretty well, I'd have to say.
No, I bet it feels pretty good. So I first met you in this past March in Washington, D.C. We were there for the Sweet 16 to see Duke take on St. John's. And you were there kind of taking a look at Cameron Boozer because at the time we didn't know how the NBA lottery was going to shake out and where the Wizards were going to be picking up there. Ended up getting the first overall pick, which honestly pretty deserved for that Wizards team that struggled a lot over the last couple of years, though personally I would have preferred to see the Charlotte Hornets make a big move up the board to get up there in the top four, but I digress. So how does their eventual number one pick, AJ Dybantsa, how does he fit into this new-look Wizards team compared to how Cameron Boozer would have slotted in on that roster?
It's interesting because in terms of overall fit, day number one, maybe you could make the argument that Cameron Boozer would have been the better overall fit. But when you're picking first overall, you're banking on the upside, and you're trying to project which of these players will be the best when it's all said and done, or at least 5 years from now. And for Washington's case, drafting a 6'9" athletic wing out of BYU and AJ Dybantsa, you're banking on the scoring upside that he has. And I think truly his ability, one, to get to his spots, to the mid-range, to put pressure on the rim, something the Wizards have not done very well in the last couple of years, get to the free throw line, is something that was really difficult for them to pass up on. It might take a little bit of time to maybe mold the roster, construct it a little bit around Dybantsa as he kind of elevates his game. Because right now the biggest question a lot of people have had is, what does the dynamic look like with Trae Young on the floor, a typically very high-usage player in the NBA throughout his 8-year career? AJ Dybantsa, 33.5% usage rate in his freshman season at BYU. But we've already heard from the general manager, Will Dawkins, and Dybantsa himself kind of alluding to the idea that early on in his career, you could see him playing in this role off the basketball a little bit more. And I've always thought that conversation was blown a little bit out of proportion because at the end of the day, Dybantsa is an athlete. He's a basketball player. And if he wants to be truly great as a scorer and an overall player in this league, he's going to have to learn to pick up the ancillary skills that are necessary to fit within a role that the Wizards need him to play at this point in time. So I think the fit is going to be just fine. Might take a little bit of adjustment time, but this is a very, very special scorer that Washington picks up first overall.
Yeah, no doubt. A talented player we've heard about for many years and a deserving selection at number one for Washington. So Wizards are going to look a bit different next year. Obviously, you mentioned the acquisition of Trae Young. He just signs a new contract. They made the trade to acquire Anthony Davis as well. In the Southeast Division, things are changing rapidly. We saw the Miami Heat make a big trade, go out and trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, acquiring Bobby Portis in that deal as well. And then, of course, the big trade comes down yesterday from Charlotte with LaMelo Ball being shipped out to Minnesota for some draft assets and Naz Reid. How do you think the Southeast Division is going to shake out this year with all of these changes on all of these different rosters?
It's crazy what's happened over the last course of the week in this division, and it's a great topic, I think, around basketball. With Miami, I'm not actually particularly moved by the Giannis Antetokounmpo trade.
I agree on that, by the way.
Right. Like, they're going to be better. I understand that. They were a play-in team last year, lost to Charlotte on the game-winning shot from LaMelo Ball, and then LaMelo Ball now finds himself out the door, but I'll get to the Hornets here in a second. I still don't really know if Miami has enough shooting on that team at this point in time. Maybe that's something they're going to acquire via free agency or make another trade to pick that up. But as it comes down to it right now, I'm not sure that Miami team is that much better. I know Giannis will raise their win total by a little bit, but the Eastern Conference overall and the league as a whole is getting more competitive here as the years have gone along. So I don't really see Miami as a massive threat just because they added Giannis. One, availability's been a bit of a question for him over the last couple seasons as well. If he's healthy, obviously that's going to help them out a ton, and I think they will ultimately be a top 6 team. But I don't know if they're destined for an NBA Finals run with the acquisition of Giannis. And when you go to the Hornets, I was very surprised by the news yesterday of the LaMelo Ball trade. We kind of heard rumblings about it, and then I feel like it quieted down for a little bit. Then you just see the blockbuster take place yesterday. And it's interesting because LaMelo Ball, I thought, was one of the better offensive engines in the entire league last season. I know he's kind of a guy that has developed this reputation as shooting you in or out of a game just because of what his play style is. But I'm wondering what the adjustment will look like for Charlotte. I know Kobe White just got a new 3-year, $74 million deal, and I think he's a pretty solid player and he could stabilize things offensively. But this is a pretty big shockwave of a move, I'd have to say. I want to know what your thoughts were on it.
Yeah, it's a conflicting feeling for me because I saw the same thing you saw. He is or was the engine of that offense and kind of helped make it go and was a big part in that lineup that went. It was I don't remember exactly what the record was. Something like 31-9. It was like a 775 win percentage when they had their preferred starting 5 on the floor there in the second half of the year. But at the same time, I understand why they decided to move on from LaMelo Ball, given his injury history, given the way that the new front office and coaching staff is kind of trying to turn over the culture of the Hornets and maybe move out some of the older pieces or the carryovers from the previous regime. The only thing that's a bit of a sticking point for me is the return on the trade. I love Naz Reid as a player, and he's been somebody that I have wanted to see the Hornets maybe try to acquire for a while. But just him, a 2033 first-round pick, which we were talking yesterday, that kid's what, in 6th grade right now? Or maybe he's a rising 7th grader?
Yeah.
And then a bunch of pick swaps that could ultimately not improve the Hornets draft position. I would have liked to see them get a little bit more if they had decided to move on from LaMelo Ball, but I don't hate moving him out. I doubt that he will be as available in the coming seasons as he was this year where he played 72 games. And the context is important there as well because the reason I think he was able to be on the floor for so many games is because they had a bit of a minutes restriction on him. And there were even a couple of games where they actually brought him off the bench, which was a bit controversial. So I'm curious if the Timberwolves will be able to manage his ankles and his injuries as well. But what do you think this does for Minnesota? Obviously, it improves their backcourt, and they get a co-star to play alongside Anthony Edwards and will help get some of the double teams off of him. But to me, I don't know if this makes them any more of a contender to get over the hump in the Western Conference. So what do you think about that?
It seems like a very desperate move from Minnesota, in my opinion. And Ball is a good player. Edwards is obviously incredible. I'd put him as one of my top 10 players in the league right now, which is necessary to win a title. And I was honestly shocked in 2024 that Minnesota came up short in the West Finals against Dallas. I thought that team was primed for a run to the finals. But I'm not sure if Minnesota maybe feels like the walls are closing in, that Anthony Edwards is not going to want to be around that much longer after the next couple of seasons, and they're trying to utilize whatever they can get in this window. But it's just tough sledding in the Western Conference right now. I don't think anybody could have anticipated a literal alien joining the conference and taking everything over in 3 seasons. OKC is who they are, and drastically teams keep on improving in this league right now. So I think Minnesota was feeling the pressure of what the Western Conference has become, and they felt like it was necessary to go out and get somebody to pair in the backcourt alongside him. I don't know if it really moves the needle necessarily for me, but this is one of probably the early window they're going to have for the next few years, so they're going to have to try to make the most of it.
Hornets are crossing their fingers it doesn't move the needle with all those pick swaps they have coming up in the upcoming years. We'll shift gears now to the next player that is rumored to heavily be discussed in trade talks, and that's Jaylen Brown with the Boston Celtics. Was apparently the main piece Boston was trying to move to Milwaukee in exchange for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis, of course, ends up getting moved to the Miami Heat, as we were just discussing. Do you think Jaylen Brown does end up getting traded? It's being reported today that the Celtics are seeking at least 4 first-round picks in any deal for Jaylen Brown. Is he going to be a Celtic at the start of this next season, or do you think he'll be in a uniform to start the 26-27 season?
No, I think he plays elsewhere to start next year. And from what I heard, based on people who were at the draft in Brooklyn this past week, was a lot of the noise surrounding that situation is that the relationship between Brown and Tatum is just not at a point where they believe it to be salvageable. And that's why there's been this kind of, it almost seems like desperation for Boston to move on from Jaylen Brown, because you would think to yourself, why would they be so desperate to get rid of this guy? I understand the situation that Boston was in where four guys are kind of being paid all of their money pretty much right now, between Tatum, White, Brown, and I'm drawing a blank on who else in that situation. But that duo of Tatum and Brown is really, really good. And if I were Brad Stevens, I'd be hesitant to moving on from what that is. And I know last year was kind of interesting because Tatum's out for the entire year with the Achilles tear. He comes back and not quite right, really, in the games that he does play, including that playoff series. And Brown was playing at an MVP level for pretty much the entirety of the regular season. So I don't know if playing without Tatum made Brown realize he feels like he deserves to be on his own team. But it seems like he doesn't want to be in Boston anymore. That's just my impression, my opinion of it. So I do think a trade ends up happening at some point here in the next couple of weeks. I don't know if they get that price that they're looking for. It's an expensive supermax player, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, if LaMelo Ball is only getting a current sixth grader and a bunch of pick swaps and seconds along with Naz Reid, I don't know if they'll be able to get that haul that they're looking for Jaylen Brown. Hornets, by the way, apparently in the mix in terms of these discussions for Jaylen Brown, and we will see how that shakes out. Ben Strober, Locked On Wizards podcast and 106.7 The Fan in D.C. Before I let you go, we both cover some Southeast Division teams. We're talking about how that division is improving or making changes this offseason. Who do you think comes away as the winner of the division? I know you mentioned, and I feel kind of the same way, that Miami maybe made marginal improvements by acquiring Giannis Antetokounmpo. Do you think they've done enough to win the division, or is a team that we haven't even mentioned in the Atlanta Hawks, will they run it back as the division winners next season?
I think Miami wins it. I think by a relatively slim margin, I would say. I'd put Atlanta and Charlotte in a similar category. I might give the edge to Charlotte right now. I was impressed with what they did in the second half of the season. And honestly, if the Wizards are able to replicate a similar type of season that the Hornets had last year, I think that would be the kind of step forward that they need to take this year to really get things on track to where they hope to be in the next couple of years. I think I'd give Miami the slight edge, barring health from Giannis Antetokounmpo, but I'll give them the edge for now.
Yeah, Washington, do you think they're bouncing into postseason basketball next season, or is it going to take a little bit longer?
I think the play-in is feasible. Obviously, you're counting on Trae Young being healthy. Anthony Davis, will he be here past the trade deadline is a big question. How healthy will he be? That's always a massive question with him. But I think with those two in the fold and barring Alex Sarr taking another pretty significant step forward, Keyshawn George also having a pretty good year, number 3, and then just having a overall pretty solid rookie season from A.J. Devonta, I think it is plausible that they could be a play-in team. But the Eastern Conference, it's improving. Like, I can't really point to too many teams right now and say, I think those are bad teams. Maybe you could say it about Brooklyn, Milwaukee, maybe Chicago. But there's not a lot of teams right now you can just hand pick, especially with these new lottery reforms, and say they're going to be bad next year because nobody's tanking now.
It's been a busy week in the NBA. Lots of movement, lots of teams getting better, some teams potentially getting worse, but we will see what happens this next season. Ben Strober, Locked On Wizards podcast, 106.7 The Fan. I appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks, Max. Appreciate it, man.
Once again, that was Ben Strober, Locked On Wizards podcast, and a producer for 106.7 The Fan. Appreciate his input on the Washington Wizards getting the number 1 overall pick and how the dynamics are changing in the division with the Charlotte Hornets for this upcoming season. I'm Max Goren with 3 things you need to know right now from 99.9 The Fan. UNC and NC State basketball were slated to play just once this upcoming season in Chapel Hill, but it was reported yesterday that the Wolfpack and Tar Heels will also face off in a non-conference game in Greensboro in December. An official announcement and details on the game are still to come. Speaking of Greensboro, the Carolina Hurricanes released their preseason schedule for the 2026-27 season yesterday, and it features a matchup against the Nashville Predators at First Horizon Coliseum on September 24th. The Canes have not played in Greensboro since moving to Raleigh in 1999. The Durham Bulls are looking to stay hot tonight on the road in Norfolk, where they've taken the first 3 games in a row against the Tides. Bulls coverage is available on 620 AM Buzz Sports Radio, 99.9 FM HD2, and WRAL News Plus, with first pitch scheduled for 6:35 p.m. For all the latest news on your favorite teams, download the 99.9 The Fan app or visit 999thefan.com. Once again, appreciate Ben Strober for joining us in that past segment. Chopping up all the crazy action in the NBA this week. Lots of action in the NHL as well, keeping tabs on everything. Constantly refreshing tabs from insiders to make sure Alexander Nikishin has not yet been traded by the Carolina Hurricanes. If I had to guess, I don't think the Canes will be making that 31st overall pick tonight in the first round of the NHL draft, but we will see. Maybe something will not materialize, and they'll pick up the next future star with that 31st overall pick. So there's a record-breaking or a record-tying performance last night that I want to make sure we shout out here on The Fan, because in the WNBA, they don't necessarily get the most media coverage, and this was a really impressive feat. Marina Mabrey of the Toronto Tempo, the expansion team in the WNBA this year. It's a new team. She's had a lot of high-scoring quarters recently, a couple 18, 19, 20-point quarters. But she was able to parlay that over the course of a full game and actually tied the WNBA single-game scoring record last night. Marina Mabrey put up 53 points for the Toronto Tempo, and it was all partially, at least, thanks to a really hot start. I think she had 20 points in the first quarter. Here is Marina Mabrey on getting off to a hot start, leading to her record-tying performance with 53 points.
I just think a lot of things go into it. We've had some rough starts to the quarters. We've also had so many moving parts. We've had some injuries, some people in and out of the lineup. So just stepping up for my team where they need me. We needed to start better. So I knew that I was going to be super aggressive today. And then just my teammates finding me. Like, we have an elite level point guard that finds me every single time I'm open. And also our bigs coming back really helps because they set great screens for me. So a lot of shout out to my teammates.
Shout out to her teammates, but also shout out, again, Marina Mabrey, 53 points last night. Couldn't find one more just to get that solo record, but the way that things are trending in the WNBA, I've seen multiple super high-scoring games, particularly from the Atlanta Dream, which is kind of like a mini super team. They just acquired Angel Reese this past offseason. They've had some super high-scoring games, so things are getting more high-octane in the W for sure, and something to keep an eye on throughout the summer. This time of year, after NHL playoffs are over, NBA playoffs are over, if you're not particularly a baseball fan, and I am somewhat of a baseball fan, but unfortunately my Boston Red Sox are in the throes of mediocrity right now, so there's not a lot of joy to be gained from watching that. Sometimes this part of the sports calendar can be a little bit of a lull. We are very blessed, I think, this summer with the World Cup being in America. That means that the start times are also kind of revolving around us, although there's also been like quite a few. I mean, there's 2 11 p.m. games tonight. There's been a few midnight starts, so maybe not always the case, but thankfully we've had, or we'll have a month and a half of soccer to help get us through this stretch. But one of my favorite events in the sporting calendar is about to start next week, and that is Wimbledon. Wimbledon is starting on Monday with the first round, and somebody participating in Wimbledon this year that we haven't seen for a few years is Serena Williams. She just made her comeback to the WTA. She was playing in a doubles event, grass court championships in Berlin and the HSBC championships at Queen's Club. Now she's going to be at Wimbledon. She's going to play doubles with her sister, Venus, and she's also going to play in singles. She got a wild card berth into the Wimbledon singles draw. She's going to take on Maya Joint in the first round on Tuesday. That will be her first match. Not the most forgiving draw for the legend. If she makes it to the third round, she's actually going to have to play defending champion Iga Swiatek, who won 6-0, 6-0 in the final last year. So don't necessarily love Serena's chances of making like a deep storybook run, but it's going to be good to see her back on court, on the grass, because, she's a legend. Best women's tennis player of all time, at least in my opinion, and I think most people would share that. So the fortnight of Wimbledon coming up starting on Monday. That is going to be another 2 weeks of good sports here in the middle of the summer. Obviously, Wimbledon happens every year, but it's always good when it comes around to see a little bit of Grand Slam tennis here in the middle of the summer. Appreciate everybody for listening in here this week and listening in today. Again, Paul Eihander out right now. He'll be out on Monday as well. We'll have no show Monday, but we will be back on Tuesday to chop everything up. I'm sure I'll try to squeeze in as much Wimbledon coverage as I can. But again, lots of great World Cup matches tonight and tomorrow, and then the knockout stages beginning on Sunday, and the stakes are really getting high there in the World Cup. Again, if I had to suggest anything tonight or this afternoon, watch that France versus Norway game. That one is going to be all time.